Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome back to the Speed Chess Championship in 2024 that you can follow now, of course, live also on chess.com. So we have now the match that everyone was waiting for. We have now the most intense games between Magnus Carlsen against Hans Moke and Niemann. Usually this would be not the derby or something, but we know what happened last year between Hans and Magnus when Hans won his game with the black pieces in a classical game against Magnus. Huge drama happened in the chess community. We're not going to dive deeper into the subject because it's not my place to talk about that. But I think Hans Moke and Niemann, whatever you think about Hans, it doesn't matter. I think he deserved his place in the semi-finals of the Speed Chess Championship, and he wants, of course, to prove some points here against Magnus Carlsen. He wants, of course, to win some games, but I think he's not the favorite. Of course, no one can be the favorite against Magnus Carlsen. He's simply the strongest player in the world, but Hans will probably try to make some wins, to destroy maybe even Magnus Carlsen in some openings, to maybe find some beautiful tactical shots in the middle game stage. So I think it will be an epic match for us to follow also in the next couple of hours. So let's dive now into one game. At the end of the video, I'm going to reveal then the current standings. In one game they played in a 5+1 game, Magnus Carlsen opened with the move c4, the English opening, knight to f6, the Anglo-Indian defense, knight to f3, e6, and now Magnus plays g3, trying of course to maybe even after move d5 to go into the Catalan opening with the move d4. Here we have d5, but now Magnus plays a tricky sideline. He plays now the move bishop to g2, which becomes now the Neo-Catalan. The concept of this opening from white perspective is a little bit different. You're not playing the move d4. You're still flexible. You can in some lines play the move d3 or the move d4. With the common Catalan move would be then the move d4. And I'm telling you this because it's now very important to understand this opening theory that's going on now on the board, because I think in the first couple of moves Magnus Carlsen would trick a little bit here Hans Moke and Niemann in the early stage of the game. Here we have bishop to e7, and when I face this whole setup by white, when he's not playing immediately the move d4, then I like to play myself the move d4. So I prepared at home these types of positions. I usually play this stuff when my opponent is not playing this move. So as I said, at least I'm now occupying from black's perspective the center of the board. Then after something like kingside castling, you can play c5, e3, knight to c6, or you can maybe immediately play the move knight to c6. And I think you're pretty solid here. You have your space advantage. You can play then e5, and you could have a mobile pawn structure. Here after bishop to g2, Hans Moke and Niemann delays this pawn move with the move d4. He plays normal development, bishop to e7. We have now kingside castling also here by Hans Niemann, and now d3. Again, you see Magnus is not rushing with this common Catalan moves. He's not playing the move d4. Now again, there is an option here for Hans to play the move d4 himself. I think this move should have been played because at least you're doing something in the center of the board. Now after move d3, Hans is trying now to move a5, and now Magnus plays normal development. Again, you have the option of d4. Hans plays a passive c6, which is not a huge problem or something. Nothing lost, I would say, here for black, but it's such a messy setup. The bishop is still blocked out. This knight doesn't have good squares in the center of the board. This knight still, we're going to go with the knight. So I think in the early stage of the game, Hans missed already many times the move d4, and after move e4 that Magnus Carlsen played, obviously again you could try this concept. But now Hans plays knight to a6, and after knight to a6 he basically invites now Magnus Carlsen into the attack. Magnus plays immediately here the move e5, says thank you. You didn't play d4 yourself. You never played d5. Now I'm going to attack you. You have to now step back. Look at this. Knight to d7 by Hans Niemann. And this is already such a passive setup, because both of these knights, the knight on d7 and also the knight on a6, are basically targeting the same square. Also the bishop on e7 is targeting the c5 square. So now Magnus built a beautiful space advantage around the square e5. He can support this pawn on e5, and he can slowly but surely launch a flank attack here on the king side, because he gained many spaces here. And look at this, black's pieces are already cramped. Knight on d7 not good, knight on a6, bishop to c8 not good. The only good piece I would say is here maybe the dark square bishop on e7, and Magnus continues as promised. H4, he has the spaces, he can attack the position immediately. B6 by Hans, and now rook to E1, supporting simply here the pawn on E5. Bishop to B7, huge decision, but a great decision here by Magnus, undermining now the center, but now locking fully the center out now, because when you start to launch a flank attack, you don't want, of course, the center to be open. Then you're also vulnerable to some attacks, maybe by the bishop, maybe by the knight. Now when the pawn structure is locked out here in the center of the board, Magnus can continue with this pressure on the king side. And look at this, bishop on b7 locked out. Bishop, as I said, maybe this one is a good piece, but this knight is out, doesn't have good squares. This knight can maybe jump on b4, but will be easily kicked away with a potential a3 move. So nothing, not a good continuation here by Hans Niemann. Really too passive setup, and you see now how Magnus is punishing these types of structures. Bishop to c6. Hans is desperately trying now to get some pieces into the game, but now Magnus continues with knight to g5. If you play bishop to g5, then rook to c1, and the basic attacking idea would be then to play something like queen to g4, and then bishop to h6, setting up a beautiful mating net, and also maybe to play then bishop to f1, bishop to d3. These are, I think, the normal attacking ideas here for white. After knight to g5, that's why b5. Hans is trying to make counterplay on the queen side, but it's not working. Too dangerous position already. Look at this. In move 15, Magnus Carlsen is already threatening a checkmate in one, and Hans is now forced to do something. He plays now bishop to g5. Even if you play something like, I don't know, h6, we can even step back in one moment. I think the bishop will be sacrificed here for the pawn. Rook lifts could happen here. Bishop to f1, as I said, bishop to d3. Too many options here simply for white. After queen to h5, bishop to g5, bishop to g5. What should you do? Even if you try here queen to b6, then queen to g4 again with the same pattern, bishop to h6, and then after king to h8 again, maybe bishop to f1, bishop to d3. After bishop to g5, queen to e8 by Hans. Magnus continues now again with the same plan, queen to g4, king to h8, and now rook from a to c1. Magnus noticed now that the bishop on c6 is a little bit loose. Nothing is dramatic again going on this side of the board, on the queen side, but Magnus keeps his options on the c file, and you see that actually this move rook to c1 is very important. Actually, this is a very thematic move, because when you are on the attacking side, one of the basic principles of chess says that you should include all of the attackers into the game. Now the rook on a1 didn't play in the game. He included at least on c file, where it's indirectly so far attacking the bishop on c6. Knight to b6 by Hans, but again, even if you try knight to c4, seems tempting. b3 is going to happen. So no counterplay here for Hans Niemann on this side of the board. Knight to e2 by Magnus. Look at this. He's liberating now the c file. Bishop is hanging. Bishop is not hanging, but the queen is overloaded to the defense of the bishop. And now Magnus is trying knight to f4, knight to h5, knight takes g7, knight to f6. So the knight, when it comes to h5, it will become a monster piece for sure. So what should you do? If you try here rook to g8, this wasn't playing the game, then again knight to f4, you're trying to do something like this, bishop to f1, bishop to d3. Again, very messy position. Here in the game, knight to b4 by Hans, trying knight to d3, fork against both of these rooks, but here Magnus continues with his own plan. Knight to f4 allows even knight takes a2. But Magnus continues again with this plan, which is a great choice. Knight to h5, continuing simply the attacking flow. The threat is, of course, knight takes g7, king to g7, bishop to f6, and then checkmate immediately. So if you try here, maybe knight to c1, then even bishop to f6 in some lines is for you're trying something like this, and maybe in some lines you can get even checkmate like this. So after knight to h5, rook to g8, here we have knight to f6. Brilliant stuff here by Magnus. What should you do? Again, if you try this one, we'll simply pick up the queen, and again it's game over. After knight to f6, queen to f8 here by Hans Niemann, but now queen to h5, again threatening the checkmate. You're forced now to take. Magnus took here, you have to cover, but now we see the problems, and now we see actually the beauty of the move rook to c1. The queen, as I mentioned, was overloaded to the defense of the bishop on c6, and now after rook takes c6, knight to c4 in this particular position, Hans Niemann resigned. Magnus Carlsen won the game in a really spectacular way. Okay, so let's see now what's going on in their match. So far, as I'm recording still this video, the result is 7 points for Magnus Carlsen and 3 points for Hans Niemann. I don't want to say what's going to happen. Probably Magnus Carlsen will win the match for against Hans, but I think Hans had also some chances in the lost game, in the games that he lost. I think nothing is over here. Hans managed to spice up many games the position. He found really good attacking ideas, at least in his fast time formats. Of course, Magnus has now huge result already, +4 in the blitz section. Huge result for Magnus, but Hans is trying to battle. We'll see what will happen, but it's so far a great game here also by Magnus Carlsen. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. The winner of this match we know will face then Alireza Firouzja, who won also his match today against Hikaru Nakamura. So we had many great games so far in this beautiful Speed Chess Championship in 2024. If you want to see some already analyzed games, here on my YouTube chess channel from this event, check out our coverage today. Here are some beautiful games played by Hikaru and Alireza already from the event. And if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos. And what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.